You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to Kerry Greenaway and Mark Manley on the Dark Mirror Paranormal Show, only on Parasearch Radio.
Good evening and welcome to the Dark Mirror Paranormal Show. My name is Kerry Greenaway and I'm joined in the studio tonight with two lovely, lovely people. Mark Manley, as always. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening. I hate kids. Go on.
And Kaz Rooney is with us as well. Good evening, Kaz.
Good evening.
Oh my goodness, what a day.
It's going to be one of those. We've got mad drunk people, we've got mad Scottish people, we've got mad Yorkshire people with London accents, mad flipping teenagers dressed as Chewbacca, cats on top of speakers staring at me, licking their jubblies, dogs doing God knows what, walking away, and then I've got Kerry going, call me boss. No.
I did actually tell him that I expected him from now on to be on his knees peeling grapes and feeding them to me one by one, but he was having none of it, Kaz. I just don't get it.
I wonder.
I'm not going to tell you what I said. Because
it was a little rude. I'm not going to lie, you know.
I get involved doing something with a banana and something else, but I can't remember.
Anyway, moving swiftly on. Last week, we spoke to the guys from Paranormal Investigations Northern Ireland, and I have to say they've kind of become my best friends since then. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, no, they're cool guys. I enjoy talking to them. Every now and again, they send me messages. The mad one, I can't remember his name. He sent me a message. Yeah, he sent me a message, and I think I was at work, and he was sitting in Costa having a coffee. But no, I've thoroughly enjoyed that.
It was great, and if you missed it, it's on podcast, so go back and have a little listen to it, because it was a really good show, and we thoroughly enjoyed talking to those guys, and I'm sure at some point we'll have them back. And so, anyway, on to this week's show. Now, last week we talked to the Northern Ireland guys, but the week before that we were looking at the gremlins which affected the planes in World War II, and we had a look at folklore and myths and legends all to do with that. And it's kind of turned into like a little mini-series, because before that we even looked at instrumental transcommunication, didn't we, Mark?
We did, which to layman's terms, and not people who are trying to use long words to A, sound impressive, and B, bamboozle the listeners, means white noise.
Oh, okay, whatever. But I just like to use big terms. You know me, it impresses people, apparently.
Yes, sorry, just 1 second.
Anyway.
That's either you or the dog.
Ooh.
Carry on.
Anyway. So we've looked at those two aspects, and this has sort of kind of led into like a little theme to do with mechanical things, you know, computers, TVs, telephones, planes. So this week we thought we'd have a little look at trains, like ghost trains and stuff.
Planes, trains and automobiles. I still think you should have played Madness Ghost Train.
I'm not allowed to play music, you know this.
Well, that's just... That's just...
Anyway.
Yeah.
You wanted to do trains? Off we go. We're going to have a little look at trains tonight. So, Kaz, any thoughts on ghost trains?
I have read up on some haunted railways or railway stations. I've never investigated trains or railway stations, I have to say. But I believe there could be stuff there. Believe there could be something in railway stations, but trains I'm not really convinced of. Yeah?
May I suggest relax and let the Scottishness come through, because guaranteed by the end of the evening you're going to talk the hind leg off a donkey. I do. Come on, love.
But no, I've never investigated or really looked at trains as such. Railway stations I've looked at, but I've never investigated them. But I don't know if I believe in ghost trains. I think that's a stretch.
There's a heck of a lot more to it than just the trains, because you've got the stations, the tunnels, the lines, and there's also the old favourite that keeps coming back about London, which is the ferals that live in the subterranean levels underneath the underground tracks.
Yeah. It's a huge subject, and again, when we was researching this, it turned out to be, oh God, there's a plethora, I love that word,
you love that
information
word,
on this.
Plethora.
A plethora of information. Now, the first time I ever really kind of found out about ghost trains or linked into ghost trains was one of the very first books that I read, and it was a play that was written in 1923. As you can see, I was quite a pretentious child, by a guy called Arnold Ridley, and it was. I was. I remember reading this in primary school, not even secondary school. This is a primary school read.
Well, to be honest, I read To Kill a Mockingbird at primary school, so, you know.
Exactly. So you kind of read those kind of books back then, rather than Barney Ghost.
I don't expect the dog to call me boss.
Well, I expect my dog to call me boss.
Oh, your dog looks at you and just barks and growls at everybody.
Anyway, now this particular play that I read was written, as I said, in 1923 by a guy called Arnold Ridley, and the plot revolved around a party of assorted railway travellers who found themselves stranded in a waiting room in an isolated country station in the evening, and they missed the last train, and they ended up staying in the waiting room. And the station master tries to get them to leave the site, but they all refuse. And it's actually more of a psychological look at the interaction of people in that circumstance under a scary kind of situation, because the station master tells them that, if you stay here, there's a ghost train that passes through here, and anyone that sees it is, going to die, basically. It's not to do with that. It's more to do with the World War II spy and, espionage kind of scenario. But that's what it's under, and it's actually really interesting. And if you catch it, it's even now, it has that scare factor to it of being stuck on a train station in the middle of the night, which I don't know about you guys, but that's happened to me before now. I've been stuck on a train station in the middle of the night.
Yeah, but to be fair, you were out plying your trade, but, hey, that was when you were young.
No, that was waiting for the first train in the morning after clubbing all night. That's where I was stuck on the train station.
I was right. Carry on.
Nothing to do with plying my trade. Oh, God, you give me such a bad name, boy.
What are you on about, boss?
Oh, my computer's making noises at me. Anyway, and yes, Richard, he did. Arnold Ridley did actually play Private Godfrey in Dad's Army. You're very correct.
Yes.
But he wrote this screenplay, or he wrote this play in 1923, and that's kind of where he made his money, and it's done theatres all around the country, and, but when we think of ghost trains, and when I watched that play, it really sort of struck a chord with me, because it conjures up that exactly what we're out there are, for, part of what we're for, which is the eerie and the spectral and the scare factor and that atmosphere that, we do on a regular basis when we go out investigating.
Well, yeah, and one of the scariest things I think I've ever seen was that night that you were very, very drunk. But we won't go into that because there's just so many stories and you'd probably get arrested. So, but apart from that, yes, there have been some scary places, haven't there, Kerry?
Kaz, back me up here. I'm not always drunk, am I?
No, of course you're not.
Oh my God, my co-host. I might have to sack my co-host, Mark Manley. That's all I can say.
If you do that, I'll just start up a radio show on my own then.
Anyway, so when I first started looking at ghost trains, I sort of looked out there and I thought, okay, let's have a look at ghost trains, expecting like a million stories about real spectral ghosts of trains. And I didn't really find many ghost trains except for the real life ghost trains that there are. Now, I didn't know that this was an actual thing, that there are scheduled passenger trains that are run on, obscure hours and stopping at stations that almost nobody uses. And they must be very eerie to travel. And apparently there's a thing that people do this just to travel these obscure lines at obscure times to get that fear factor. What do you make of that, guys?
It's, to be absolutely honest, I can't mention any names, but a certain gentleman who works at London Underground has said that when you've got those old stations like Churchill's old station and stuff that nobody can go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have been asked if I would like to go and visit some of these stations when they have got access to it.
Cool.
So if and when that happens, I'll be taking lots of photos and I will let you know what the score is.
Yeah, because, as I say, these stations... Now, I wondered why they still ran these. Now, railway companies would rather serve these routes than not at all, because they do generate very little traffic, so they're not earning the companies any money. But if they discontinued the routes completely, they would be obliged under British law to formally abandon the lines, and that's very costly and time-consuming and legally complex. So what they do
Yes.
So what they do is they kind of run a real, like, once a week or, once every now and again. So they actually call them ghost trains. They actually call them that because they're so remote and they're really strange. It was a really strange phenomenon. That interested me, to be fair. I know that's weird. Kind of sang to me.
Yeah, you're a weird person anyway. So, do you know what one of the most common things that's actually found underneath trains? Because they have to clean the underneath of the trains.
Mm.
One of the most common things two of the most common things that are found on a regular basis underneath trains, and I kid you not, is feet and hair.
Really?
Really?
Yep. Feet and hair, yeah.
Good God.
Wow.
You've got to feel sorry for the workers, haven't you?
They get, yeah, exactly. They get paid loads and loads of money because they work for specialist companies because you got it's the same companies that clean up after murders and this, that, and the other. But the ones I feel sorry for are not the people who find the bits, but it's the drivers who see the person just before. Yeah, I feel sorry for them. But as you said, there aren't a lot of ghost train, reports out
Spectral ghost trains.
Yeah, spectral ghost train. Like, we do ghost trains, but there are lots of tunnels and stations themselves that are haunted. So, we can do a few of those. And I can do the Scooby-Doo voice every now and again and not mention aliens or anything like that.
Oh, God, every week.
Ah!
Every week. This is not even anything to do with that. And every week you manage to get it in there.
Ah, you love it. Yeah.
Anyway, going back to the ghost train phenomena that people can actually travel, there is one that leaves from 11:36 a.m. on weekdays from Paddington Station in London, which is bound for West Ruislip over the Acton to Northcote line. And the platform itself is actually hidden in the far corner of the station behind a temporary construction wall. So it's really hard to find the station as well, like the platform as well. Now, these trains are called parliamentary trains, which is said just to satisfy the law, basically. And they don't actually care if anybody rides them or not. I found that fascinating.
That station you're on about is actually where I moved, just near where I moved from 2 weeks ago. Acton and Norfolk going to Ruislip.
Is it?
Yeah, it's Norfolk's what, 2 miles away from where we live? That's where my daughters used to go to school.
Okay, so how about... I actually quite fancy doing one of these trips once, at some point.
Yeah, if you want. I mean, you up for that? Let me just ask the boss. Let me just ask the real boss. Lindsay, you up for that? Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I quite fancy travelling one of these weird ghost trains. Just to, as I say, I think it would actually be quite eerie. And I didn't realise they were a real life phenomena. Like you could actually do this. So I might actually try that one day and just sort of just see how and where and when we can do that. So that would be good. Right, so anyway, moving on. We then moved on after I found out this useless piece of information about ghost trains. So,
give
one
the
of the
listeners
main
a nudge,
things...
they'll wake up.
Sorry?
Give the listeners a nudge, they'll wake up.
I know. I found out these pieces of useless information whilst I'm researching. So anyway, one of the main things people always seem to ask about hauntings is why do we not get more modern hauntings? It's quite a thing. It's always, somebody from the 16th or 17th century. Why do we never get any modern hauntings? Why is it always age old? Well, I actually found a haunting that was quite modern.
Yeah?
To do with railways.
Are you... Oh, I know what you're going to talk about. Let me guess, this has got to be London.
Yes.
This has got to be the 1980s King's Cross Underground disaster.
That's right.
King's Cross Underground disaster. I was actually one of the first aiders. I was in Guildford at the time, and we were sent up there to go and help with everything that had been going on. I was only young at the time, but I think I was... I can't remember, 17, 18, and there was some pretty nasty things out there. And after the event itself, there was a heck of a lot of reports of strange things going on because there was people welded to the bits of metal and stuff as well. So
awful scenario. The King's Cross fire of 1987, and there was actually 31 people that died in that fire. Absolutely horrendous. But since then, at King's Cross Station, there has actually been a haunting of a young woman with long brown hair wearing modern clothing that is said to walk the corridors of one of the, of this particular station. And she's supposed to be screaming loudly with her arms outstretched. But when people go to her aid, she kind of just like disappears into like thin air. So, this is a modern haunting with a modern researchable history that happens in London from a disaster that is, which I remember, and I remember being so upset watching that. What about you, Kaz? Do you remember that?
I do remember it, but I mean, you talking about it. I mean, if that same scenario, if it's the same scenario all the time, isn't it residual then?
Did I just hear a lighter?
No.
No.
Did I? I swear I heard a lighter.
No.
What? I agree
right,
with you, Kaz. Is this residual? I mean, I think it must be, really, because actually, when we talk about why do people haunt locations, it's trauma. A lot of what we put things down to is the trauma that's being caused at the moment of death. And I have to say, the King's Cross disaster would probably be, I say probably, would have been incredibly traumatic. I remember that distinctly, watching that on the news at the time, and I found that quite traumatic to watch. So let alone the people that were involved or were actually part of that disaster.
Yeah.
So
Some
I can
parts of the
understand
station-
why.
So I was going to say, some parts of the station, the temperature got to as high as about 1,200 degrees.
Wow.
I mean, when you think about that, being trapped underground and not being able to get out, that's quite traumatic, isn't it?
Yeah, like I say, I mean, we didn't go inside, but we were outside, and it was absolute bedlam and chaos, and just not a nice place to be. And you could hear some horrible sounds coming from there, and it was just wasn't nice. And those poor people in there, it's not surprising, as you say, with the amount of energy that's released at the point of death, and in that particular form and way. It's no surprise that there's going to be residual there, and there's probably a few people still stuck there.
Well, I could only find this one particular account at King's Cross, which was this modern day, haunting. And that's why I brought it up, because, many, many times in investigations, the question comes, why do we not... I mean, there's the famous comment, isn't there, is that why do we never have somebody coming in modern clothing, shell suits, shouting, Britney Spears and all that, you know what I mean? Whereas this was quite a modern day clothing scenario. So that's why that particular haunting for the railway link interested me, because, it is more of a modern day thing, and it's traceable. You can research that, you can look into that, and if you look into it quite extensively, you can find out the names and places of people that were involved and died in that. So it's researchable, rather than like a 16th century where stories get lost in time.
There's a couple of researchable ones as well. There's one from the 1970s. It started in the 70s and goes up to now. Funny enough, we were talking to, I think, the Northern Ireland guys we talked to last week. I think they went to York Road Railway Station, which is in Belfast. Basically, a person has been reported sitting in the locked canteen at night, and it may be the same figure that's been glimpsed in the running sheds. During a bungled wages snatch, a man was either shot or beaten and then died from his injuries. And night staff have also reported hearing disembodied footsteps in the area, and that's still going on now, and it started in the 70s. And you've also got in Dorset a report in the summer of 91, a big place called Bingham in Dorset. 2 train drivers reported hitting a shadowy figure while passing through the tunnel. They slammed on the brakes and everything, and the police were called out and all that. And they investigated the scene of the incident. They found nothing.
I know. It's actually quite a common thing on train stations, as we found out. I mean, going back to London, we found there was quite a lot. And in fact, you can even research, if you look it up, the London Underground have issued a map of the most haunted underground stations in London.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, Covent Garden itself is supposed to be, it's supposed to have a man in a tall hat, coat and gloves that stalks the dark tunnels. I love that. The dark tunnels of the underground.
Dark tunnels. You're telling me it's haunted by the Phantom of the Opera?
I would love to say that, because that's one of my favourite theatre shows. However, it is supposed to be William Terrace, a guy called William Terrace, who was murdered in 1897 at the nearby Strand.
And where did it take place?
It happened outside the doors of the London Adelphi Theatre.
Phantom of the Opera. There you go. You're going to hear Michael Crawford singing and chucking masks at people tomorrow.
Now, apparently there is still a green plaque on the rear wall of the theatre that commemorates the fact that William Terrace, he lived from 1847 to 1897, met his untimely death outside this theatre on the 16th of December in 1897.
We discussed this in a previous show. I'm sure we did. I remember we talked about this in a previous show, and it wasn't the murderer somebody from a rival theatre company. They were doing the same show at the same time, or something like that, and they were asked not to do the show, and they went ahead and did it, and the lead character came over and shot him. Sure, we spoke about this one.
We did, and I do believe that was in a show we did on curses to do with Macbeth. Well, it was to do with that whole curses kind of show. that we did.
Yeah, I do have a memory.
Sometimes.
It's not rattled by alcohol.
Now, the Strand is also incredibly common when I did my research because it is linked to Aldwych.
Oh, yeah. Which station? Yeah.
Aldwych train station. Now, Kaz, have you heard of this one in your investigation sort of things?
I briefly remember looking it up when I was looking at haunted railway stations. I can't remember the full story though.
It used to be an air raid shelter, didn't it?
Well, Aldwych opened in 1907 as Strand Station, and it was closed during World War II, but it actually shut in when did it shut? 1914. But it has the original, it's all original, so it's incredibly Victorian. When you go down to it, it's really, really Victorian, and it is absolutely perfectly preserved. Now, it actually shut in 1994, I knew I had the date somewhere in my notes, my copious notes that I've made. Now, this is infamous, this station. It has had many, many films shot down this particular station, and you can visit it, and you can hire it for paranormal investigations, although it's incredibly expensive, guys, just putting that out there. Now, films that you would have seen at Aldwych Station is V for Vendetta, Atonement, Superman 4, 28 Weeks Later, and even some series of Doctor Who.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah. Mr. Rook, if he's listening, he'll be able to tell you chapter and verse as to which episodes of Doctor Who there were.
Mm-hmm. He probably would. Now, you can also see, this is, you can see the tracks, the train tracks.
Yeah.
Now, before they introduced something called suicide pits, the tracks are original, so they haven't got any suicide pits. Now, I found that bit a little bit macabre and interesting, funny enough. And they're also called Dead Man Trenches. Now, just a little side note on this. There is one fatal accident per 300 million journeys on the Underground.
Well, I've been on the Underground lots of times, and I can't honestly say I've never had an accident. Only when I've been drunk, but that's another thing.
Yeah, but I found that fact quite fascinating because that's not a lot, really, when you think of how many journeys, how many people travel on the Underground every day. You know what I mean? That's not bad, is it? But that's why you get things like Mind the Gap. I love that. When the man comes over the tannoy, Mind the Gap. Love it.
Yeah, but to be honest, that Mind the Gap all started when there was a recording made for my ex-missus when she was walking down the road. Anyway.
Kaz, carry on.
Shocking.
Oh my God. Okay, anyway, these are pits that are in modern stations. These are actual pits that are dug beneath the actual tracks for accidents and stuff like that. So it's called suicide pits because it gives people a way to get out of the trains when they're coming because they run so regular. So it gives people a chance, basically. Now, anyway, back to Aldwych Station. We've actually got a couple of people in the chat room tonight that have actually been to Aldwych. One is Andy Mercer, our very own Andy Mercer, and Carl Hutchinson has been there too. He's in the chat room too. So, hi, guys. And now, railway undergrounds were infamous across London, basically for being World War II air raid shelters in the war, obviously. But in regards to Aldwych, they actually managed to store treasures from the British Museum, including the Elgin marbles.
The what?
What?
Elgin marbles. Have you not heard of the Elgin marbles?
It rings a bell, but please
oh my
do
God, I'm
refresh
surrounded
all our
by
memories.
Philistines, the lot of you. These are from the Parthenon, where they are absolutely amazing statues that the British stole from the Greek even, and put them in a museum.
Yeah, get your words right, love. Get them to the Greek. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're now in the British Museum. They're not marbles.
Have you lost your marbles?
They're not marbles. They're beautiful statues.
Have you lost yours?
I haven't lost them, honest to God.
You sure about that?
Seriously. You need to go to the British Museum. Seriously, guys. Come on. I'm going to have to do a Parasearch trip to, start educating you guys. The Elgin marbles. I can't believe neither of you know about these. I really can't believe this. I'm absolutely blown away that you don't know what the Elgin marbles are. Anyway, they kept these down in Aldwych Station during World War II and to preserve them. And they also kept, Grand Masters from the National Gallery down there as well to preserve them so they didn't get, damaged during World War II.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to add that because she sends me a begging letter every now and again saying, please call me boss and make out you're thick sometimes. So we do have to sit back here and feign ignorance and pretend we don't know anything. So, just gives her all kudos to her. Oh, I forgot to mute the mic. Oh, well.
Jesus Christ, he's on... Yes, thank you. Thank you, Andy M. Andy M says you're all fired.
He doesn't pay me a wage!
Now, this was actually... Aldwych Station is actually built on the site of the old Royal Strand Theatre, and staff reported seeing the ghost of an actress who once trod the boards at the demolished theatre. Now, one thing I would like to say about undergrounds and regards to air raids, again, think of the emotion that was involved in that. You can imagine, you can just almost set the scene in your head, can't you? About the atmosphere and the the bombs dropping, even the drums popping.
Yep, this is why you just don't do drugs, kiddies.
The bombs dropping. You can almost, even now, you can get that sense of atmosphere, can't you? Without even being in a disused railway station.
Well, if you go onto the Google bomb map, you can actually see what bombs were dropped, how many, where, and when you look at the stations, you can see why everybody was underneath there, because they got absolutely rinsed. But everybody who was in the station survived, so, very good idea.
Mm.
Well, very much so. I mean, I have to say, you can definitely feel it. Now, we're going to take a quick little break. When we come back, we're going to have a look at a few more railway stations from around the country, because there was loads and loads of ghost stories, but nothing tangible. So we're going to have a look at a few of those when we come back after the break. So bear with us, guys.
Hello, Harry Price here. Good evening. If there's nothing myself and everybody else enjoy here on the other side more is the sit back and relax and listen to Parasearch Radio with its paranormal news, views and reviews from across the UK and beyond. Make sure to find out more about them on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web, whatever they are, to keep up to date with all their broadcasts throughout the week. And I hope you enjoy them as much as we do over here. Hello? Is anybody there?
Welcome back. You're listening to The Dark Mirror Show. My name is Kerry Greenaway. I'm joined by Mark Manley and Kaz Rooney. Now, we're looking at ghost trains and haunted railway stations and all that kind of stuff tonight. In the first half, we covered a few stations in London, and trust me, there was a lot more than what we've mentioned tonight.
Yeah.
Again, there's a plethora of information, so we've had to, condense it down. Now, I went West Country, Mark. You know about
you
West
did,
Country,
I
don't
noticed. You did. Well, I used to live down there. I lived down there for 20 years. So did my missus over there, Lynn. She did as well. Didn't you, me handsome? And my daughter who's waving frantically at me and doing some strange teenager sign language that I can't understand. But she used to talk like I do. I talk in here. She used to say, "I love you, Daddy." But I digress. Do carry on.
Okay, finished?
Yeah, I think so. I'll have me dry frog pills in a minute, all right?
Poor old Kaz doesn't stand a chance to get a word in edgeways with you around, does she? Kaz, would you like to talk to me about Torrington Station down in Devon?
I don't know much about it. This is the thing. I am totally winging it because ghost trains and train stations are kind of alien to me. I've looked at them, but I don't know enough about them.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you about Torrington
Tell
then.
us.
Torrington Railway Station was closed in 1965 but was later converted into a public house, which is a common theme. Now, Guests at the train-themed Puffing Billy restaurant, I can just imagine what that's like, have reported ghostly encounters and hearing some strange noises, and that they believe that the site is haunted by two ghosts, a station master, Albert Ernest Wilcox, and his wife Mary. They moved to Torrington Station in 1909, but Mary died in the building in 1914, but Albert stayed on at the building until retiring in 1926. Now, this could be a case of people that loved that building and that lifestyle so much that they just want to stay in that.
One thing I can tell you about Torrington Station is, there's lots of reports. The locals will tell you it is basically they love the building so much because they did do a lot to the building and helped run it for years, and that's why they stayed. They never left because they loved it so much.
Yeah. Now there's another one down in Somerset. Now this is a tunnel. This is a tunnel. It's called the Box Tunnel, and it's between Bath and Chippingham, and has been the source of many a creepy rumour over the years.
Yeah, I know what you're on about. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's near Chippenham, it's got to be scary, I tell you.
Well, in 2011, 4 night workers heard the cries of a woman at the mouth of the east exit when one of the guys shone his torch into the distance. The group reportedly saw I love this. Saw a woman in a nightdress, and then she vanished. And when the men reported the sightings, they were told the same figure had previously been seen by a group of 6 men. Now, woman in a nightdress.
Chippenham. It's Chippenham. It doesn't surprise me. I'm only going to say that it's well known for their cider and drinking habits down that way, and it is well known for people to be seen scantily clad after quite a few bevies. Let's put it that way.
Wow, no comment. Is all I can say. I've never been out in my nightdress on a train station.
Me neither.
There's time for everything.
I might try it later just to freak a few people out. That's kind of the mood I'm in tonight, a bit reckless. Anyway.
And before I forget, just a little thing I saw in the... I get sent an email every day from the Sun and the Star and this, that and the other, keep up on the news. Somebody in London, and I can't remember whereabouts it was, but they got done for dressing up as a ghost in a graveyard and jumping out and scaring people. Anyway, carry on.
Whatever floats your boat, I suppose, you know. I think we've all been tempted to do that on occasion.
Well, to be absolutely honest, I think the best one I ever heard was that nursing home in America where they had to warn one of the guys there that if he carried on doing what he was doing, he would be kicked out and sent to another nursing home because he kept dressing up as... what was it? He kept dressing up as death and appearing at the ground floor residents' bedroom windows and just tapping on it with his side and standing there saying nothing.
No, that's just sick.
Yeah, that is sick.
No, I'm just saying that's what he did, and he got warned. I can't remember if there was any deaths or not, but you know.
God, that I have to say, there's a sense of humour in that's just sick, and I think that's sick of a nursing home. That's horrible.
There's America.
Yeah, I don't care where it is. Putting that out there, I don't find that funny.
That's just cruel.
That was funny. I just said that was one of the things that happened.
I know. Anyway, let's move on. I do not endorse that kind of behaviour in no state whatsoever. I do not endorse that. Anyway, moving on. Birmingham. Let's go to Birmingham. New Street Station is deemed to be one of Birmingham's most haunted sites. Over 4 people have committed suicide on Platform 4, and many commuters. Oh my God, I can't even read my own writing. I can't read my own writing. Have reported seeing their spirits over the years. Now, one ghost is supposed to be that of Walter Hartles, who shot himself at the age of 68, whilst another is called Claude, a dapper man dressed up in Victorian garb. Now, allegedly, the station was built in 1848 on a Jewish cemetery that was dug up specifically so they could build the station on it. And there have been reports of people that were supposed to have been buried in the Jewish cemetery to haunt that too. No comment, guys.
Wow.
I was just listening to you talk. You carry on.
Okay, I will carry on then. In Warwickshire, we're going to Warwickshire now, in Leamington Spa. Now, Warwickshire, I'd just like to point out, it's actually quite haunted in general. When I was looking into Warwickshire, that, you know, obviously you've got Warwick Castle, but, you know, that whole area seems to have a little hotspot for activity.
Yeah, I mean, it's been regular reports of Romans and everything down there as well, hasn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder why. We might have to look into that.
It's the same thing. I mean, you had the Roman garrisons all around there, and it's like bar spa and everything like that. All the Roman bars and all the Roman spas. You'll invariably hear lots of legends and tales in those areas of Roman legions going through and Boudica coming along and ripping them to bits and everything like that. Which, even though it was mainly over in Essex and Kent, but, you know, hey.
Well, in Leamington Spa Station, there's reputedly one of the most haunted places in Britain. Now, many commuters and staff have reported supernatural incidences. One of the haunted areas is a disused basement on platform 3, which has a partially blocked off staircase that seemingly leads to nowhere, which it must lead to somewhere, but they just don't know where. But, you know, at the time it was obviously built for some reason. It's not exactly in the UK, we don't tend to have things that just lead to nowhere, do we? We always have a reason for it.
Why would you have a basement in a railway station? Sorry, I was just trying to figure that one out. Why would you have a basement on the platform? I can only think there must be, to get to the line, I don't know, wires or whatever underneath. I don't know. Either that or there's a madman down there.
No, you see, there is a thing here. Now, what we investigated quite a little while ago, a train tunnel. I think tunnel is probably a strong word for it. And just before a train goes through, you can hear the lines. You can hear like there's like a electric hum, isn't there, on the lines before the train comes. Now, we took some photographs that night, didn't I? Was you there, Mark? I can't remember if you was there or not. And
no, I wasn't. I don't think I got asked, did I?
You might not have been part of the team then, actually, because this was very, very early days. Anyway, when we was taking a photograph of the tunnel entrance, above there's like a green haze, and there's clearly a face in the green haze. Now, obviously, nowadays you go, it's pareidolia, blah, blah, blah. But just before a train comes along the tracks, and I would say it's probably a good minute or so before the train passes through, the tracks itself have this kind of like hum where the electrics are gearing up, you know, or vibrating is probably a better expression.
You've also got the extremely high EMF that gets thrown off the cables as well.
Exactly. Well, just before we took this photograph, we actually had stones being thrown. Not in the tunnel, but just outside the tunnel. And it was so weird because it just seemed like they were being thrown at people, not just dropping.
Oh, right, okay.
It was a really, really strange phenomena that occurred. I'm not saying it was paranormal. I'm just saying around this, with all the electrics going and, you know, that sort of thing, the vibrations and stuff, there probably is a quite logical explanation. But some of the photographs we got from that night and the feelings we got around that time, they were really quite weird. Yeah. And there is, where we were is actually quite a high, suicide spot, which is why we're there, obviously.
I was going to say, you've also got, there's the age-old theory about the telegraph lines, but that also runs with the railway lines as well. You know, about the spirit that runs up and down the lines when somebody died and they keep them alive they run up and down the lines, if you see what I mean. There's lots of legends about that in Old Midwest telegraph lines and also in railway lines when steam trains used to go along.
I mean, the whole steam train thing does conjure up very romantic imagery in your head, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, Second World War, kissing your other half goodbye as they go off to war, and
evacuees.
You hear the toot.
Yeah, and the evacuees and the sort of thing like that. I mean, when you start thinking about it, it is quite, evocative of emotion even now, in this day and age of modern railways. So is it something to do with that? I don't know. Now, one thing I did find actually really, really quite interesting when I was looking into this phenomena was it's not so much of a haunting, but it was something a little bit macabre. And it was called the Metropolis Railway that ran out from London. Excuse me.
All right, then.
Yeah, I'm just choking a little bit, but it's fine.
Okay.
Now, the Necropolis Railway ran for 87 years from London to somewhere called Brookwood Cemetery. And basically what happened was London became overrun with dead people. So what they did was they decided to make a cemetery dedicated to London deaths, external of London. And they made a railway specifically for this.
Yeah, around Brookwood, you can still go past the cemetery. It's a long straight road, and it's got really, really long red brick walls all the way down it. It's near Woking. I used to live in Guildford. And to get from Guildford to Woking, you can go through Brookwood and drive up through the road that goes up through the middle of it. It's you do get a strange feeling if you drive up there at night, especially if you're on a motorbike and it's the early hours of the morning. You get a very, very eerie feeling when you go up there. And there's one particular stretch where there's supposed to be reports of a woman coming across the road and screaming, and then the age-old thing of cars going into her and she vanishes. But I've never seen that. But you do get a very strange feeling up there.
That's right. It ran from 1854 to 1941, and it transported London's dead southwest to as I said before, the Brookwood Cemetery near Woking in Surrey, and it was built specifically for this. In 1894 to 1903, the train carried more than 2,000 bodies a year, but it also transported their friends and family. Guests could leave with their dearly departed at 11:40 a.m, do the burial, have a funeral party at one of the cemetery's 2 train stations, and they used to put on a little spread and everything for the wake, and then they could take the same train back, returning to London by 3:30.
That sounds so bizarre.
It sounds
compared to
so
these
bizarre.
days.
It does sound bizarre.
But it also sounds very Victorian, like it's something that Victorians would do, doesn't it?
Well, this was back in 1854 to 1941, so it is sort of like in early, that kind of time frame, that kind of mentality.
Well, Gothic horror, yeah.
You can imagine it, can't you?
Yeah. I don't think I'd like to go on.
Well, no, but, people became sort of like kind of accustomed to it. They didn't see anything odd about it at all. He said that, why would that be odd when it was, when you're burying somebody, it doesn't sort of like make a difference. It sort of made it more of an occasion.
And a good family day out for everyone. Sandwiches with crust cut off.
I know it sounds a little strange, but at the time, they loved a bit of mourning, didn't they?
Just a little bit. Is somebody killing their microphone?
No, I'm not.
Sounds like somebody's microphone is dying.
No.
Oh, okay. Anyway, in the mid-19th century, London cemeteries were notoriously overcrowded, which is why they did this. In 1801 to 1851, the situation only worsened. So every year, London was burying another 50,000 dead. I mean, that's a huge amount of people, isn't it? The burial space remained less at 300 acres. You can imagine 300 acres, but 50,000 dead. That's extraordinary.
Ooh, that's not going to be fun.
So they had to look at different solutions. I mean, at one point, the grave diggers in London were turning to distasteful solutions like digging up previously buried bodies and cremating them at night. I mean, they had to find a solution, and this was one of the solutions they found, was the Necropolis Railway. Now, oh my goodness, this whole subject of the Necropolis Railway fascinated me. Absolutely fascinated me, because
actually do a show on itself about it.
To be fair, there was plenty of information that you could do on this one. Only those who could afford spots in new exclusive burial grounds like Highgate, which, oh my goodness, Highgate Cemetery on my bucket list, putting it out there to the universe yet again, because I will visit Highgate. Now, that's obviously one of London's most famous cemeteries. They were exempt from possibly being exhumed and unceremoniously created, but eventually Parliament shut the cemeteries of inner London to new burial grounds and opened a series of large suburban cemeteries, and Brookwood Cemetery was one of those. It has 1,500 acres compared to just 218 acres of burial space within London, and was nicknamed the London Necropolis, and it was the largest burial ground in the world at the time. Now, as I say, I have looked into Brookwood. You can still visit it. It has alleged hauntings at Brookwood Station. The railway line still exists. It's not a running railway, but it still exists. You can visit it. Brookwood, that is, not the actual railway line itself. It is not accessible at this point in time. I did look into that because, a little bit macabre, but fancied a visit.
There's something else Carl's just said in the chat room, that some of the original rolling stock from the railway is actually at the Railway Museum in York, which I happen to live very, very close to. And Lindsay's, my partner's grandfather, he used to work on the railway lines, and there's a picture and a plaque for him in the York Railway Museum. So I think I might have to go there at some point and have a look.
Yeah, definitely. It is a fascinating... If you don't know about the Necropolis Railway, definitely look into this, because it is absolutely fascinating, and I'm literally skirting the edges of the information on this particular railway at the time. It was pioneering and revolutionary at the time. Nowadays, we would be absolutely horrified, but the move from burial to cremation has taken place in the last 100 years. Most people tend to be cremated these days, don't they?
Yeah, well, you've got the option now to be turned into a diamond as well, haven't you?
Well, I'm already a diamond.
A diamond in the rough, because you're in amongst all us lot and these guys in the chat room. You got Andy and all that lot in there, so yeah, diamond in the rough.
Oh my goodness, just putting that out there,
tree.
guys.
Get turned into a tree as well.
Yeah, or you can dedicate your body to science and go into something
You did try that. You did try that, but they just laughed at you and told you to bugger off.
Yeah, they said I'm well too preserved for that. Now, the trains themselves were outfitted with leather straps to keep the coffin secure. And as I said before, they carried both the mourners and the deceased. Now, fares were capped even by the Act of Parliament that had established the railway and remained constant throughout the railway's lifetime. It was 6 shillings for a return first-class ticket in 1854. This was worth about £25 in today's terms.
That's a lot of money back then. That was, in fact, for some poor folk, that was more than a year's wages, wasn't it?
That's a first-class ticket.
Yeah.
Now, where are we? In a third-class ticket, it was about 8 shillings. 2 shillings, which was about £8.
Right.
So there were different classes. Now, for the dead, I love this. For the dead, it cost £1. Just £1 in first class, and 2 shillings 6 something in third class. I don't know what a 6D is.
It's just old money. It's 2 shillings and 6pence.
Oh, okay. That's what it cost anyway in third class.
Do you remember? I don't know. You're my age. Do you not remember that? Like in the 70s, you used to have a third class on the trains.
Yeah, I remember classes, but not like shillings and pence. I'm not that old.
You're older than me.
Anyway, there were 2 sections at the cemetery, and the group could get off at South Station, where the Anglican section was, or the North Station for the non-conformists for the funeral, and refreshments. Like I said, you could have refreshments and everything. I just think this is... nowadays, this sounds bizarre.
Do you know what? Funnily enough, my daughter's on her way back up to London on one of the Virgin trains as we speak, and I've just got a vision of one of the Virgin stewards going past with a trolley, like, "You bring out your dead."
Oh my goodness!
Eggs, biscuits.
I hope you don't tell her that. Anyway, in 1909, the modern hearse was introduced, and by the 1920s, it had overtaken both the horse-drawn hearse and the train. But the true death knell for the Necropolis Railway came in 1941, which was coincidental the worst night of the Blitz on the 16th of April. Bombs killed more than 1,000 people and caused more than 2,000 fires, including one that ripped through the London, the London Necropolis railway station, because most of the buildings were destroyed. So rather than, keeping a train that was already running just for 1 or 2 journeys a week, they decided to close down the railway and stop the Necropolis railway.
Well, you can understand it.
Yeah.
1,000 people in one night. Wow.
That is astonishing, isn't it?
That's scary. That is scary. I'm glad we're not in London anymore.
Well, I'm glad we haven't got World War II going on around us anymore.
No, we've just got other things possibly going on, but let's not wonder about that.
And let's not dwell on those kind of scenarios. But anyway, talking about ghost trains, like I said, I could find plenty of information about stations and, railway tracks and tunnels, but not actual factual encounters with an actual real true life ghost train. Oh, I didn't find anything at all. I found lots of hearsay and myths, but no actual accounts of somebody seeing a ghost train coming out them from the
there isn't.
mists. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I sent Scooby-Doo and the gang out, and you can ask him yourself, Scooby, did you find anything? I don't know. No, that's a no then.
No, I didn't. And I've only looked at the UK so far. I mean, we didn't even get a chance with the amount of information I found. So far, we've not even looked abroad. I mean, we haven't looked at the horrendous conditions that were building the railways through America or Burma.
Yeah. Funny enough, one of the last gentlemen, the last guy alive who was on built the Burma Bridge, he died. I think it was yesterday or the day before. Just putting that in there. Brave guy.
Who?
Somebody. The Burmese bridge that the Japanese made their prisoners of war build in the Second World War.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the last guy alive from that, who was still alive from that, passed away a couple of days ago.
Oh, okay.
Read about that.
I mean, I didn't even go out of the UK on this. I mean, there are, like Carl has just said, there are accounts of steam train sounds being heard in the Liverpool area. I mean, there was a massive, massive accident that was on one of the bridges. Was it the Tyne and Weir Bridge?
Yeah.
There's
so many.
There was so many, but no actual, verifiable accounts. In fact, the most verifiable I could find was the King's Cross disaster, but only because it's so modern. You could, look into that a lot more deeply. But in regards to actual ghost trains, I couldn't find any. But it did lead me to the question of, and we will revisit this on another show at some point in the future, is why do we have encounters with inanimate objects like ghost buses, cars, alleged trains? Not that I could find any. Why is it that we have encounters with inanimate objects or see ghosts of inanimate objects? But as I say, on the ghost one, couldn't find one account.
No, there's, as you say, there's plenty of stations. We haven't touched on any of the worldwide ones, and there's a lot. But it's mainly stations and the lines and the tunnels. But yeah, there is no actual chugga chugga poof poof woo hauntings.
That's a song, surely.
You like that?
That's a song. There's a song there somewhere, surely. Anyway, we've actually come to the end of our show tonight. I hope you enjoyed that. Now, next week, right, Kaz, my darling, what are you doing next week? Tell us all about that.
I am going to East Drive on Monday, and I'll be staying at East Drive until Thursday. I'll be back home again on Thursday.
Okay, so you're there for basically 3.5 days.
Yeah.
And do you have a team with you for the whole day, for the whole time?
There's going to be 10 of us each night staying there. So we're only allowed to take 10 people. They're only allowed 10 in the house at any one time. So there will be 10 people each night.
But in between each night...
It'll be me.
Just you.
They will leave at lunchtime. They've got to leave by 12. And then I will be in the house on my own until 6. Until the next lot turn up.
So that's 6 hours.
I might come down. I might bring you a flask of tea because it's not that far away from here.
So for 6 hours, for 3 days, you will be completely by yourself in 30 East Drive.
Yeah.
Okay. So next Friday, guess what we're going to be talking about? We're going to have a look at how Kaz got on in this extended investigation that she's doing at 30 East Drive. So definitely tune in for that, guys, because that one is going to be absolutely fascinating to me. We're going to have a little look at the history, and we're going to be speaking to Kaz next week about her experiences, particularly as she gets this time when she's completely by herself in 30 East Drive. And let's just hope she makes it back safely. I mean, next Friday we could be sitting there going, where's Kaz? What happened to Kaz?
We are a paranormal show, so if anything happens, she could still join us live on the airwaves.
I've told her to take, her voice recorder and send me little snippets so I can play them out live on air as it happens. So join us next Friday for that. Now, guys, as you all know, we have shows going out every single night of the week. We start off on Sunday. Now, this week I have a New York lady called Alex Matsua coming on live from New York City. She is a paranormal investigator, blogger, and works in the theatre as well. She is absolutely awesome. I've had the absolute pleasure speaking to her this week. And what she is just awesome. I could listen to her all night. So join me on Sunday at 9 p.m. And then every night during next week, we have shows going out at 9 p.m. Keep an eye on our Facebook pages, our like page and our group page for further details on that. We are also on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So if you miss a show, you get a notification when a new show has gone downloaded onto there. Thank you so much, Gray, Carl, Richard, Andy Mercer, all the people that have joined us in the chat room. And thank you so much for listening. Take care, and we bid you a firm farewell. Say good night, guys.
My name's Kerry Greenaway. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.